The Ancestor's Tale, A Pilgrimage to the Dawn of Life by Richard Dawkins. Picture this. You're at a party, maybe a busy coffee shop, and you lock eyes with a complete stranger. They're from halfway across the world, speak a different language, live a totally different life. You look away, thinking you have absolutely nothing in common. But here's the wild part. You're actually related to them. I know. Obviously, we're all human, so technically we're all cousins somehow. But the real question is, how far back would you have to scroll through your family tree to find the connection? 1,000 years? 10,000? 100,000? Ready for this? According to mathematics and genetics, the most recent common ancestor of every single person alive today, all 8 billion of us, lived just a few thousand years ago. We're talking maybe around the time the pyramids were going up. Their DNA flows through every single one of us, from Manhattan to Mumbai, from Oslo to Osaka. And if that blows your mind, just wait, because if we're all connected through one recent ancestor, what about our connection to other living things? The chimpanzee grooming itself at the zoo, the lizard sunning on a rock, that oak tree in your backyard, even the mushrooms on your pizza. This is exactly what Richard Dawkins explores in his absolutely epic book, The Ancestor's Tale. And I mean epic in the truest sense. This isn't just a book, it's a journey. A 4-billion-year pilgrimage backward through time to discover where we all came from. Dawkins isn't just some random science writer. He's one of the most brilliant evolutionary biologists of our time, a professor at Oxford who literally held a chair created for the public understanding of science. For decades, he's been the guy who can take mind-bendingly complex ideas and explain them so clearly you feel like you're having a conversation with a wise, slightly mischievous grandfather. His first book, The Selfish Gene, revolutionized how we think about evolution. The Ancestor's Tale, with over 500,000 copies sold, might just revolutionize how you think about yourself. Today, I'm taking you on that pilgrimage. We're going to travel backward through time, not forward, and that distinction matters. We're avoiding the trap of thinking evolution was somehow aimed at producing us, like we're the grand finale of creation. Instead, we start with ourselves and walk backward, meeting our evolutionary cousins at specific meeting points along the way. First the chimps, then gorillas, then fish, then insects, all the way back to the very first spark of life. By the end of this journey, I promise you'll see the world completely differently. You'll understand that life isn't a million separate stories. It's one incredible, interconnected family saga, and you're part of it. So let's begin our pilgrimage to the dawn of everything. We're starting right here, right now, in the present. We're the first pilgrims on this journey. But before we fire up our metaphorical time machine, we need to understand the most important rule. We're going backward. Why? Because of what Dawkins calls the conceit of hindsight. It's this natural human tendency to look at history like it was all leading up to us. You know those pictures showing hunched-over ape men gradually standing upright until, ta-da, perfect modern human? Yeah, evolution doesn't work like that. It's not a ladder with us at the top. It's more like a tree with millions of branches, and every single twig on that tree is just as evolved as any other. Dawkins puts it brilliantly. If elephants wrote history books, they'd probably see evolution as this grand march toward the ultimate achievement, the trunk. They'd look at tapirs and elephant seals as interesting attempts that didn't quite nail it. We're not the goal of evolution. We're just one fascinating temporary branch on an absolutely massive tree. By traveling backward, we drop this arrogance. Whether you start from a human, an eagle, or a bacterium, all roads lead to the same place, the original ancestor of all life. We'll follow our own path, but along the way, we're going to meet our cousins. Let's take that first step back. Our first stop is Rendezvous Zero. This is where all modern humans meet. We touched on this mind-bending fact already. The most recent common ancestor of everyone alive today lived just a few thousand years ago. How is that even possible? It's all about population math. Family trees don't spread out forever. they start folding back in on themselves. With people migrating and mixing over centuries, it becomes almost inevitable that certain lucky individuals end up on literally everyone's family tree. But this person, this concestor 0, is what we call a genealogical ancestor, your family tree ancestor. The genetic story gets even weirder. This is where we meet the famous mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosome Adam. Eve wasn't the only woman alive in her time, not even close. She's just the most recent woman from whom all living humans descend through an unbroken chain of mothers, your mom's mom's mom, and so on, all the way back. Every other woman from her era either had no children, or their maternal line eventually died out. Same deal with Y chromosome Adam. He's the guy from whom all living men descend through an unbroken line of fathers. Here's the kicker: Adam and Eve weren't a couple. They almost certainly never even met. Mitochondrial Eve probably lived around 140,000 years ago, while Y chromosome Adam lived much more recently, maybe only 60,000 years ago. They're just two single threads in the massive, tangled web of our ancestry. Every single gene in your body has its own unique family tree, its own path through time. This reveals something profound. You can be an ancestor to all of humanity without a single one of your genes surviving. How? Because with each generation, you only pass on half your genes. After enough generations, the chance that any specific gene from a distant ancestor made it to you becomes incredibly tiny. Ancestry is about family trees, but evolution is about genes. With that lesson learned, we push further back. We pass our archaic human relatives, like the Neanderthals. For years, we wondered if they were our direct ancestors. Did early Homo sapiens hook up with Neanderthals in ancient Europe? Genetic evidence from Neanderthal bones suggests probably not. Their mitochondrial DNA is distinctly different from ours. They were our cousins, not our grandparents, a separate branch of humanity that thrived for a while but ultimately went extinct, leaving us as the last humans standing. Now our time machine kicks into high gear. We speed past the ice ages, through hundreds of thousands of years, deep into the warm plains of Africa during the Pliocene. About 6 million years ago, we arrive at our first major meeting with another species. Rendezvous 1, the chimpanzees. Picture this. We're standing in an ancient forest clearing that doesn't exist anymore. We humans approach from one direction. From another direction come two other groups who've already joined forces, common chimpanzees and their close relatives, the bonobos. They're our closest living cousins in the entire animal kingdom. We're here to meet concestor 1, our shared ancestor. What did this creature look like? We don't have fossils, but we can make educated guesses. It wasn't human, and it wasn't a chimp. It was something else entirely. The parent of us all. Best guess? It probably looked more chimp-like than human-like, covered in hair, with a brain the size of a modern chimp's, walking on its knuckles and feet. But here's the crucial point. Our ancestors weren't chimpanzees. People often ask, if we evolved from chimps, why are chimps still around? We didn't evolve from chimps. We share a common ancestor. It's like asking, if I'm descended from my cousin, why is my cousin still alive? The question doesn't make sense. Chimpanzees are our cousins, not our grandparents. They've been on their own evolutionary journey for the same 6 million years we've been on ours. This brings us to the bonobo's tale, which teaches a simple but vital lesson. We can't pick our relatives. Some people want to feel closer to the peaceful, social bonobos than to the more aggressive common chimps. But because chimps and bonobos share a more recent ancestor with each other than they do with us, we're exactly equally related to both. Same connection point, same distance back in time. Our pilgrimage continues. Just 1 million years further back, around 7 million years ago, we hit Rendezvous 2 and meet the gorillas. Then at 14 million years, Rendezvous 3 brings us to the orangutans, those magnificent red apes of Asia. Meeting the orangutans presents an interesting puzzle. We, the chimps and the gorillas, are all African apes. Orangutans are Asian apes. So where did our common ancestor live? For a long time, scientists assumed Africa, obviously. But the fossil evidence was confusing. The best ape fossils from that era were all in Asia. This is where the orangutan's tale introduces us to parsimony, the scientific principle that the simplest explanation is usually the best. The old theory required multiple separate migrations of apes out of Africa to explain those Asian fossils. But a newer, more elegant theory suggests, quote, out of Africa and back again. Our ancestors first migrated from Africa to Asia around 20 million years ago. There they diversified. Gibbons and orangutans are the descendants who stayed. But another group, our direct ancestors, migrated back to Africa, where they eventually gave rise to gorillas, chimps, and us. This beautiful theory is more parsimonious. It requires fewer migrations to explain the evidence. It's a wonderful example of how science, like a good detective story, pieces together clues to find the most elegant solution. At 18 million years, we meet the gibbons, those acrobatic apes that swing through trees like Olympic gymnasts. The gibbon's tale gives us a peek behind the curtain at how scientists actually figure out who's related to whom. They compare features. Used to be anatomy, now it's mostly DNA sequences. The method is surprisingly similar to how literary scholars trace the history of ancient manuscripts, like Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Imagine medieval monks copying manuscripts by hand. Each monk makes a few small mistakes, a misspelling here, a skipped word there. The next monk copies those errors and adds some new ones. By comparing the shared mistakes in all surviving manuscripts, you can reconstruct the family tree of copies and get closer to Chaucer's original. DNA works the same way. Mutations are like copying errors. By comparing the spelling of genes in different species, we can work out the branching pattern of their shared history. It's painstaking work, but it lets us draw the map of our entire 4 billion year journey. Now things start moving faster. We meet Old World monkeys, then New World monkeys. The howler monkey's tale reveals a fascinating story of convergence. We Old World primates evolved 3-color vision, red, green, and blue. Most other mammals only have 2-color vision. But deep in South American jungles, howler monkeys independently evolved the exact same 3-color system. Why? Almost certainly, to spot ripe fruit among green leaves. Life often finds the same solutions to the same problems. The mammal section of our journey is wrapping up. We meet rodents, then the Loraciotheres, a huge group including everything from bats and bears to horses and hippos. And here, the hippo's tale drops a bombshell. For centuries, we classified hippos with pigs. They looked similar, made sense, right? But molecular evidence is crystal clear. The hippo's closest living relative is the whale. This was absolutely shocking. It meant whales aren't some separate group that randomly went back to the sea. They're deeply embedded within the even-toed ungulates. They're basically seafaring hippos. Their bodies changed so dramatically while adapting to ocean life that their true ancestry was completely hidden. It's a powerful reminder that appearances can deceive, and sometimes the truth is written in our genes, not our bones. At 140 million years ago, we cross a major threshold. We meet the marsupials, kangaroos, koalas, opossums. The marsupial mole's tale is a masterclass in convergent evolution. For tens of millions of years, Australia was an isolated island continent, populated almost entirely by marsupials. They spread out to fill all the ecological roles that placental mammals filled everywhere else. There was a marsupial wolf, the thylacine, marsupial mice, marsupial squirrels, and even a marsupial mole that looks and acts almost exactly like the placental moles of Europe and America. They're not related at all, but faced with the challenge of living underground, evolution arrived at the same engineering solution twice. Australia is like a parallel evolutionary experiment, showing just how predictable evolution can sometimes be. Even further back, at 180 million years, we meet our most distant mammal cousins, the monotremes, the bizarre egg-laying platypus and echidna. The duckbill's tail warns us against using the word primitive. Sure, the platypus lays eggs like a reptile, but it's anything but primitive. That rubbery bill isn't just for dabbling in mud. It's a highly advanced sensory organ packed with tens of thousands of electrical sensors. It's basically biological radar, allowing the platypus to hunt with its eyes, ears, and nostrils closed, building a complete three-dimensional electric picture of its underwater world. It's one of the most sophisticated sensory systems in all of nature. Just before we meet the reptiles, our pilgrimage pauses to witness a moment of cosmic drama, the Great Cretaceous Catastrophe. 65 million years ago, a massive asteroid slammed into Earth, plunging the world into darkness and cold. It was the end of the dinosaurs. For over 100 million years, our mammalian ancestors had lived in their shadow. Small, nocturnal, shrew-like creatures, scurrying around, trying not to get eaten. The catastrophe was their golden opportunity. With the great reptiles gone, the world was wide open, and mammals exploded into the spectacular diversity we see today. At 310 million years ago, we finally meet the sauropsids, the vast group of reptiles and birds. Here, the peacock's tail offers a powerful theory to explain some puzzling aspects of human evolution. Sexual selection. Why do peacocks have those magnificent but burdensome tails? Because for generations, peahens have chosen mates with the most impressive displays. This runaway process, where female preference and male traits escalate together, can drive evolution in rapid, seemingly crazy directions. Could this explain our own weird features? Why are we the naked ape? Maybe our ancestors found hairless skin attractive, a sign of health and freedom from parasites. Why do we walk on two legs? Perhaps it started as a courtship display, a fashionable new way of strutting that potential mates found appealing. And most provocatively, why do we have such enormous brains? Maybe our minds are our species. Peacock tail, art, music, poetry, humor, all the creative displays of human intellect might have evolved as complex courtship signals, advertisements of our genetic quality. It's a bold idea, but it fits the pattern of rapid, explosive change that sexual selection creates. The journey continues, deeper into the past. We meet amphibians. The salamander's tail introduces us to ring species. In California, a chain of salamander populations circles a valley. Each population can interbreed with its immediate neighbors, but by the time you get to the southern end of the ring, the two end populations have diverged so much they can't mate anymore. They're essentially separate species. This is evolution in action, happening in space instead of time. It dissolves those neat lines we draw between species and reveals the smooth continuum of life. We meet fish, then sharks, and finally, around 530 million years ago, the jawless lampreys and hagfish. We've arrived at the dawn of vertebrates. And now the scale of our journey expands exponentially. At Rendezvous 26, about 590 million years ago, we meet the protostomes. This is the great divide of the animal kingdom. We're deuterostomes. They're the protostomes, a vast group including insects, spiders, mollusks, and worms. Together, they make up over 95% of all animal species. Here, in this ancient ocean, we meet the ancestor we share with them, concestor 26. It was almost certainly some kind of worm. The ragworm's tail explains the simple, powerful logic of this body plan. If you're going to move, you need a front and a back, a top and a bottom. This basic blueprint, bilateral symmetry, is shared by almost every animal on Earth, from worms to whales. It's also here that we discover one of the most profound secrets of our shared ancestry. The fruit fly's tail tells of the discovery of Hox genes. These are the master control genes, the architects that lay out an animal's body plan during development. They tell the embryo where to put the head, where to put the limbs, where to put the tail. A mutation in a Hox gene can have dramatic effects, like causing a fly to grow legs where its antennae should be. The astonishing discovery? These same Hox genes, in almost the same order on the chromosome, are found in all animals. The genes that build a fruit fly are recognizably the same ones that build a human being. They're our shared inheritance from our worm-like common ancestor, a genetic toolkit for building bodies that's been passed down for over 500 million years. The pilgrimage is nearing its final stages. At Rendezvous 31, we greet the sponges, perhaps the simplest of all animals. The sponge's tail and the choanoflagellate's tail together tell the story of how multicellularity began. Choanoflagellates are single-celled creatures that look almost identical to the feeding cells of a sponge. It seems almost certain that the first animals formed when single-celled ancestors like choanoflagellates learned to cooperate, clubbing together to form a colony that eventually became a single integrated individual. And this prepares us for what Dawkins calls the Great Historic Rendezvous. This wasn't a backward meeting in our pilgrimage. It was a real event that happened in forward time. It was the origin of the eukaryotic cell, the complex, powerful cell that makes up your body, my body, and the body of every large living thing. This cell wasn't invented from scratch. It was born from symbiosis, a merger of ancient bacteria. Around 2 billion years ago, one single-celled organism engulfed another, but instead of digesting it, it put it to work. Those engulfed bacteria became mitochondria, the tiny powerhouses inside every one of our cells that let us use oxygen to burn fuel. In the plant lineage, another merger happened with a photosynthetic bacterium, which became the chloroplast. We're all confederations. Every cell in your body is a bustling metropolis of cooperating organisms, a community whose origins lie in an ancient act of fusion. And so we arrive at our final 2 meeting points. At Rendezvous 38, we meet the archaea, strange microbes that thrive in extreme environments. And finally, at Rendezvous 39, we meet the eubacteria, true bacteria. We've reached the base of the great trunk of life. All living pilgrims are now marching together. Our destination, our Canterbury, is the origin of life itself. We don't know exactly what it was or how it happened. It wasn't the origin of a complex cell, or even a simple one. It was the origin of something much more fundamental, heredity. The origin of the first molecule that could make copies of itself, a replicator. From that one single, improbable event, everything else followed. That first spark of heredity ignited the 4 billion-year fire of evolution, a process of gradual, cumulative change that, step by step, built the entire magnificent structure of life. Our pilgrimage is complete. We've journeyed from the present day to the very dawn of life, and we've discovered that the grand story of evolution is our own family story. As we return from this 4 billion-year pilgrimage, what's the one overwhelming lesson we bring back? For me, it's a profound sense of unity. We live in a world that often feels fractured and divided. We build walls between cultures, nations, between us and them. But the journey of the Ancestor's tale dismantles those walls. It shows us, with undeniable scientific clarity, that the divisions we create are ridiculously shallow. Go back just a little, and we find a shared grandparent with every human. Go back a little further, and we're African apes. Further still, and we're fish. Even further, and we're worms. At the very beginning, we're bacteria. The book's most powerful message is that we're not separate from the natural world. We're part of it, a single twig on one colossal tree of life. This perspective doesn't diminish our humanity. It elevates it. It gives us a sense of place, a context for our existence that's grander than any creation myth ever conceived. So how can we carry the wisdom of this pilgrimage into our daily lives? First, we can learn to see the pattern of convergence everywhere. The book shows us how evolution repeatedly arrives at the same solutions to the same problems. A marsupial mole and a placental mole are almost identical, not because they're related, but because the physics of burrowing demands a certain design. This pattern isn't just in biology. Look at human cultures, technologies, or even your own life. You'll see that different paths often lead to similar truths. It's a fundamental principle of how complex systems work. Second, we can challenge our own discontinuous minds. The story of ring species, salamanders that are both one species and two at the same time, is a powerful antidote to our love of neat labels and binary thinking. Most of life, and most of our problems, aren't black and white. They're a spectrum. Resisting the urge to put everything in a simple box is a form of wisdom. And finally, we can cultivate a deeper sense of reverence for the world around us. Next time you see a bird at your window, or a spider in the corner, or a tree in a park, take a moment. That living thing is your cousin. You share an ancestor. You're connected by an unbroken chain of life stretching back hundreds of millions, even billions of years. To see the world this way is to be filled with a sense of wonder that's both scientific and spiritual. It's reverence for the real, for the sublime grandeur of what actually is. That was a summary of The Ancestor's Tale by Richard Dawkins. We've journeyed through the main ideas and stories today, but I have to be honest. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the landmarks, but it can never replace actually walking through it yourself. The true magic of this book lies in the details, the fascinating side stories, the elegant explanations, the sheer intellectual joy of the journey. This summary is here to help you decide if this is a pilgrimage you want to take. If anything we've discussed today has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning facts. It's an experience that can fundamentally change how you see your place in the universe. A link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please show your support by liking this summary and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another one of the world's most important books. Let's continue to learn and grow together.